Even Kim Jong-un is shocked by this regime, sending a book into space, renaming bread after one's mother, a love of horses, killing a fly with a stare, winning every competition, prison for losing your virginity, and an incredible number of bans. Turkmenistan, the most insane dictatorship in the world. These are the streets of Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. Fact is, all cars in Turkmenistan are white. Do you think local drivers just have a strange preference for white cars? Not at all. It's not the people who love the color white, it's the country's president. And that love is so strong that he ordered all car owners to repaint their vehicles. Soon, the police began tracking down and impounding dark-colored cars. And the country experienced a shortage of white paint. After the collapse of the Soviet Union dissolution, its republics took different paths. Some quickly moved toward democracy, others are still in the process, and in some places an authoritarian model has remained. However, almost everywhere the regime became softer than it had been as part of the USSR, except for one country. Turkmenistan became the only post-Soviet state where the regime not only failed to soften, but actually became even more rigid. The first president of Turkmenistan, Saparmurat Niyazov, declared himself Turkmenbashi, the leader of all Turkmen. His path to power was typical of a Soviet official: education, work, joining the party, corrupt connections, and steady career growth. Before the collapse of the USSR, neither the country nor Niyazov himself stood out among other republics and their leaders. But with the arrival of independence, he seized the moment. Even before the Soviet Union fell apart, he had mastered the main principle of winning elections: the absence of alternatives. On October 27, 1990, Niyazov was elected president of the Turkmen SSR with 98.4% of the vote as the only candidate. Later, in independent Turkmenistan, he consolidated his power. The eternally great Turkmenbashi took care of his citizens and freed them from the burden of choosing between presidents. He simply eliminated other contenders for the position. Citizens voted from a single candidate, and in the end, he won with 99.5% of the vote. But his scare didn't stop here. Saparmurat then decided to abandon such a formality as elections altogether, and his powers were simply extended for a second term until 2002. And later, he even proposed making himself president for life. Saparmurat Niyazov went all out. At first, he was simply Turkmenbashi, then the Great Turkmenbashi. After some time, he changed his title again and proclaimed himself Shah. Later, he renamed the city after himself, a strait in the Caspian Sea, several airports and streets, and the highest mountain peak in Turkmenistan. Renaming cities, streets, and mountains clearly appealed to the dictator, so he decided to expand the scope of his changes. He renamed January and November after himself, and April after his mother. In honor of his mother, not only cities, streets, and cultural sites were renamed, but even bread. This product was no longer called bread. It was now called Gurban Sultan Age. He renamed September after the book Ruhnama. Ruhnama is the main book of the entire Turkmen people. It is a guidebook that summarizes the historical path of the Turkmen, describing their mindset, habits, traditions, customs, desires, and intentions. One part of the book tells the story of the deep past of the Turkmen people, while the other describes their future. Ruhnama is studied in schools, officials must pass exams on its content, and when obtaining a driver's license, Turkmen citizens take an oath with their hand placed on this book. The author of this great masterpiece is, of course, the great Saparmurat Niyazov himself. And so, you don't doubt the author's competence or the value of his work. Here is a quote from this great book.
A Turkmen can only be made a great Turkmen by a Turkmen. Only a Turkmen can make a Turkmen a Turkmen. Turkmen.
I hope after this you have no doubts about the decision to send this book into space. Saparmurat decided that his work was so brilliant that he paid Russia to launch the book into Earth's orbit. Dictator didn't neglect his horse either. Turkmenbashi placed the image of his horse directly onto the coat of arms of Turkmenistan. Nevertheless, in some ways, he was a modest man. When the number of monuments erected in his honor reached 14,000, he asked that no more be built. At one point, he even refused the title of Hero of the Republic, though by then he already held 5 such titles. He also announced a contest for the least flattering praise. The fate of the finalists of that contest remains unknown. Many believed that Turkmenbashi could kill a fly in mid-air with a glance, summon and stop the rain, and some were convinced of the leader's immortality. But despite all his supposed power, the laws of nature proved stronger. And on the night of December 21st, 2006, Saparmurat Niyazov died of heart failure, like an ordinary person. The acting president was supposed to be the head of parliament, Ovazgeldi Ataev, but in a dictatorship, real power doesn't lie with parliament. A criminal case was immediately opened against Ataev, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Whether he was ever released remains unknown. A year and a half later, the first presidential election in Turkmenistan's history with more than one candidate took place. There were 6 participants, 5 of whom were completely unknown. But in the end, there was only one name worth remembering.
Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov.
For simplicity, we'll call him Gurban. Unlike Saparmurat Niyazov, Gurban was not a complete orphan, but his career also started modestly. For 17 years, he worked as a dentist and gradually rose to become the director of a dental center. Then, quite miraculously, in 1997, he was appointed Minister of Health, and in 2001, he became Deputy Prime Minister. It would seem that an educated and cultured man like him might turn this caricature of a banana republic into a civilized country. At first, things seemed to move in that direction. Busts and portraits of Niyazov were gradually removed, the months and days of the week were restored to their original names, and studying the Ruhnama was no longer mandatory. But that was where it ended. He didn't abolish the rest of the absurdities, he simply added his own. The cult of personality around Niyazov was gradually replaced by a cult of personality around Berdimuhamedov. The new dictator adopted the title Arkadeg. Portraits of the old dictator were replaced with portraits of the new one, and along with them came new, equally bizarre rules. Wedding photos were required to be taken in front of images of Gurban and accompanied by songs he composed. Gurban inherited his predecessor's love of horses and tried to appear in public on horseback whenever possible. Monuments to the dictator's favorite horse began appearing across the country. And he didn't forget about his dog either. Statues of his dog were erected in several cities. There were also claims that Berdimuhamedov's horse took part in the 2010 parade in Moscow. That sounds strange, but it's not true. It was a different, similar-looking horse. The dictator chose to leave his own horse at home. However, Arkadak's love for horses cannot be called mutual. At one point, the dictator came close to death. During a race, his horse fell, and Gurban ended up beneath a group of other horses. He was taken to the hospital. Despite not finishing the race and being hospitalized, he was still declared the winner. Despite the accident, he won the competition, taking first place, as expected, and received a prize of $11 million, along with 7 horses worth $14 million. Then dictator decided that he too had a talent for writing, not just as good as his predecessors, but even better. So he didn't write one book, not 2, not even 10. He has written more than 40. These works cover a wide range of topics, which supposedly means that the great Arkadak is an expert in everything. These books are also mandatory reading in universities, hospitals, and across the state apparatus. Gurban is not only a writer, but also a singer and composer. He has written many songs. They say that in his hands, even the worst guitar suddenly sounds like a professional instrument. And his voice is supposedly better and deeper than that of any opera singer. At least that's what is claimed in Turkmenistan.
Uşlap gelin yılların salamı rovaç günleri hoşlap gelin yollarım coşkunlu bağları basran belent başı dağ değil yürük asman gülleyen güleşen yedi diyarım aydın sağlar yurdu can Turkmenistan.
But then, why did he invite Jennifer Lopez to perform at his birthday?
He is also portrayed as a phenomenal footballer and weightlifter. He easily defeats everyone in football and lifts a barbell, though without any weights on it. And that's not all when it comes to sports. He once won a race against a professional driver using a car he supposedly designed and built himself. He even defeated COVID-19 by simply banning any mention of it. The illness was removed from official discourse and textbooks, and just like that, the problem formally disappeared. Queues disappeared in the same way. They were banned because they harmed the image of the authorities. Security forces patrol outside shops and prevent people from gathering. Air conditioners, massages, baby food, vitamins, and dietary supplements were also banned. Despite all this, Gurban is portrayed as a real and formidable warrior, a defender of his country and people. He is presented almost as the perfect soldier, an excellent marksman with phenomenal combat skills, capable of standing alone against an entire army. And if he runs out of ammunition, he can supposedly handle everything in hand-to-hand combat. According to the official narrative, he is the best fighter in the country. Then came the moment of power transition. Gurban did not leave office due to death or revolution. He stepped down peacefully and alive, simply handing the throne to his son. Hopes that the new young leader would begin democratic reforms quickly faded. Usually, dictators try to appear moderate at first, but the new president, Serdar Berdimuhamedov, took a different path. He did not reverse the strange decisions of his predecessor. He only reinforced and expanded the already harsh regime.
Most of the new restrictions targeted women.
Cosmetics and riding in the front passenger seat are banned. And after 8 p.m., women are not allowed to travel by car at all. Flight attendants with lip enhancements were dismissed. The import of swimsuits and light hair dye has also been banned. Senior schoolgirls undergo gynecological checks, and if it turns out a girl is not a virgin, her family faces consequences. Police detain women for wearing false eyelashes or artificial nails. Tight-fitting clothing, including blue jeans, is also prohibited. Even a photo taken at the beach can lead to serious punishment. So let's move on to the prison system. In Turkmenistan, it is considered one of the most closed and harsh in the world. Trials are held behind closed doors, and statistics are not published. Prisoners are forbidden from communicating with relatives and friends, and families may not even be informed if someone dies in custody. Sometimes detainees reappear after 10 to 20 years, but more often they simply disappear without a trace. Conditions in prisons for political prisoners are extremely severe. One such prison is located in the Karakum Desert. Temperatures there can reach plus 50 degrees Celsius in summer and drop to minus 20 degrees Celsius in winter. Conditions of detention are not very different from Nazi concentration camps: torture, killings, extortion, and forced labor. As a rule, it is not murderers or rapists who end up in the harshest prisons. It's easy to laugh at the absurd actions of the authorities, especially when viewed from Europe or the United States. But for local residents, there is nothing funny about it. Such prisons are often filled with independent journalists, critics of the authorities, or simply people who dare to question the talents of the leaders. Sometimes people end up there without any reason at all. A person can be detained on the street, subjected to a closed trial, and suddenly they are in an overcrowded cell, struggling to survive in extreme heat. Turkmenistan remains one of the poorest countries despite its vast gas reserves. The revenue from gas sales does not go toward improving people's lives, but toward monuments to rulers, large-scale urban reconstruction projects, and other initiatives for the elite. Security forces, meanwhile, also receive their share. And those who disagree with this often simply disappear into the prison system, scattered across the deserts.
You might have a question.
Everything is clear with the first dictator of Turkmenistan, the third as well. He simply inherited power from his father. But how did the second one come to power? How did a dentist rise to the top and eliminate his rivals?
That story is my Telegram channel.
Turkmenistan sometimes looks like a living caricature from a comedy film. But while it may seem funny on screen, in reality it is very different. Life under such a regime is not amusing or absurdly entertaining. It is harsh, dark, and tragic.